Well, hello everyone. Can I introduce you to everyone? Can I introduce you to Emma Shepherd from Let's Talk Disability?
Hi.
And from Miriam Simpson, Sweet Homes London.
Hi.
Andy Villaber from Status Employment.
Hello.
And myself, Robert Elston from Status Employment. We thought today we wanted to talk about actually working with candidates when they're actually starting their self-employment journey or their journey into entrepreneurship. We just wanted to have a conversation about some of the different ways that we actually have to work with people. What I was going to start with, because I think underpins everything that we do, is values. And Emma, I just wondered whether you could give us an idea of how you think that the values should actually be when we were actually working with people.
Thank you, Robert. In some ways, the model that we are using is sort of taken from a supported employment model. And there are a number of values which completely underpin everything that we do. And it would be exactly the same if you're talking about self-employment as well. You know, zero rejection. If somebody's coming to you and saying, you know, I'd really like to have my own business, we would be there to try and support them. Person-centeredness. This is about, you know, the opportunities that somebody actually wants to do. So it will be about them and finding out through the vocational profiling. The social role valorization, and, you know, having the, it's like, oh, you know, like there's a poor person that wants to have their own business. It's, you know, it's taking the steps of like, that's a fantastic idea. And, you know, having like that complete integration in every sense of the term. Thinking about it from the social model of disability that, you know, it's not medical. We're not trying to fix somebody by giving, you know, supporting them into self-employment. We're looking at it from the social model point of view. Understanding the positive contribution that somebody could have. As I say, we can find niche markets, and, you know, that kind of niche market would only be found, you know, from that individual. So, you know, we are understanding that, you know, they have a lot to give, and we'll find ideas that, you know, other people might not necessarily have. You know, in partnership work. So, you know, through this, we might work in partnership with other employers, you know, with mentors, with other support services, so that you have somebody that is like fully included into society, you know, through independence, you know, through the work that they do. And, you know, it's used to develop a career for somebody. You know, somebody could have been employed once, and then, you know, they decided to look at it from a self-employment point of view.
Okay. Miriam, we often talk about values and we talk amongst ourselves, but for the disabled person who's actually receiving services, what are your thoughts as regards how the values should actually translate to yourself?
I mean, for me, I think obviously I definitely wanted to start a business. I had been employed since before I was diagnosed with my condition, and I had never imagined ever being unemployed. It was never an option for me. So for me, starting a business, I'd wanted to start a business for a long time, and I probably never knew how. But I think being on the receiving the support from you guys, or being on the course, definitely gave, even though I had a H&C in business already, which, like, you know, I'd achieved in the midst of being quite unwell, I still didn't give me the tools and the support that I needed to practically actually start a business. The practical, regardless of disability, I needed the practical tools to know how to start a business, to know how to formulate this business, to know the steps that I needed to take. And yeah, so the support was invaluable, I think, definitely invaluable. You know, my condition was never really an issue. Yes, it was there. it will always be there. It's incurable. It's a chronic condition, but and definitely the support, I think, from yourself, Robert. I think you kind of took on a mentoring capacity at one point, and just having even like the peer-to-peer support of the group was, again, invaluable, because I think one thing that I discussed with you is that I was afraid of letting people know in business that I actually had a disability for the longest time. I used to be quite embarrassed, because but then I think one of the important things was, because looking at me, a lot of times you might not know straight away that I have a disability, but it was impacting my business. It impacted, even when I was employed, it impacted my job. So, I found it, I think we had a discussion about how and who I'm going to inform, and, and why I should inform certain people, because quite a lot of my issues are cognitive. So to do with memory, to do with, brain function, and generally like communication as well. I can't always retain verbal information, so I need to stop and write. If I need to stop and write something down, I need to, it's better that I can let them know before we get into a meeting or discussion, or if I can ask permission to record a meeting, it's easier to ask that permission, because I've already said, oh, I have this condition, can you, or can you can you slow down while you're speaking to me, because I need to record or retain this information. So although some people might think, oh, it's just a silly thing, it's easy to say, oh, by the way, I have this issue, but it's not easy. Because I didn't want somebody to question my ability. I didn't want somebody to question my ability to do my job, or to question the integrity of my business, because I have a condition. I didn't want to devalue my business because I have a condition.
I think that's a good way to sort of start in the area of where we start from. Is we have in supported employment a thing called a vocational profile. Vocational profile is always about trying to get to know a person, and I sometimes think it gets complicated. And I often say to people, really, it is that time of actually spending, a long time to really get to know a person. Emma, can you sort of talk a little bit about why that is important? Certainly in the supported employment side, I think on the self-employment, it's vitally important to really get to know a person.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, it is. As you said, it is just the fundamental basis of getting to know somebody. So sometimes, as I say, a vocational profile is something that never ends, and it is a way of discovering about a person, what they like, they don't like, they want to do, they don't want to do, what kind of environment that they want to work in, what skills and abilities that you have, and generally what your aspirations are. So spend a long time doing that. As I say, it is ongoing, it doesn't ever finish, and it isn't just about having a form where you can tick an exercise and say, oh, okay, I've done your vocational profile. It's possibly even having work experience or some travel training, and just finding out as much as you can. So if it was for supported employment, you'd be able to take that information, and when you're talking about that person to an employer, you can just say, oh, somebody's got this, that, and the other skill. But it's also really important of understanding what those skills are in terms of self-employment. Whether that is right at the beginning of the journey, and you have somebody and says, you know what, I would really like to make fudge for a living and sell it at craft fairs. Well, kind of need to know, can somebody actually cook? So it's a way of being able to test out all of these skills, and in a safe way. Having an action plan so that you're continually pushing and working towards like the goals and achieving targets. And that will feed into partnership work that you would have, whether that be with an employer or with, you know, a parent or carer or a friend or a college or whatever, you know, you would have that information. But then you know, also ask them as well about, you know, because we're not always very good at saying, oh, I'm great at this, I'm wonderful at that. But if you talk to somebody else, they will say, oh, you know what, you know, Emma's brilliant at this, and or she's great at that, but I would never have recognised it in myself. So the vocational profile pulls all of that information together.
I think that's a good point. Is when you all started, Miriam, and I'm looking from my point of view, is my job was to get to know 15 people, and you were all in that room, and I thought, how on earth am I going to do this? You were all so different. And I remember you especially, you used to come in, you often came in around about 15 minutes, 20 minutes late, and then you had to go around about 15 minutes, 20 minutes early because of your childcare responsibilities. And that actually gave me less time to actually get to know you. And I think I only started really getting to know you after the actual original course finished. It's to me, I think it's an incredibly important part from our point of view of getting to know you. But I suspect from you as a candidate, or we as we always call you a candidate, but as you as the candidate side, is getting to trust us must be quite hard to do as well.
I mean, to be fair, I think before I started the course, I probably just thought, oh, this is another thing, another tick box exercise for some people who want to get some funding for disabled people yet again. I was coming, you know, probably being quite presumptuous in terms of, I probably thought that I knew more than I did know. And I think I did exactly what you said. I was probably, I had to drop off my children before I started, and I had to leave to go and collect them, leave early to go and collect them in time. And I just thought, oh gosh, I half thought, am I even wasting my time doing this course? I really didn't know what to expect, but I was really not just surprised, but I was really encouraged by being a part of it. Not just, I mean, the content was invaluable on the course. All of the, I think even I think I missed a couple of weeks. And the weeks that I missed, there's probably some of the things that I struggled with on the business. And yeah, so basically, yeah, I just think it was of a lot higher value than what I had originally presumed, because I just thought, you know, I'm just this know-it-all, and I'm still holding on to my job, although I'm inverted commas disabled. I'm one of the special disabled people, and I probably thought I'm better than most other disabled people. And this this unfortunate thing has happened to me, but I'm not really like the rest, is what I thought. So I half, you know, I think I half didn't want to, but then I took a huge amount from the course, and I wouldn't have started the business if it wasn't for the course. I wouldn't have been able to start the business because I just didn't, you know, my life was completely different from when I studied. Even though I had been ill previously, I, you know, probably kind of reached a point where I was not at my work. Yeah, I wasn't at my best, and not just the course, but definitely everybody else on the course. Really seeing them and their not just seeing them and their challenges. Obviously, we built relationship together as well. That was really important. Really important. A lot of the like I said, a lot of the stuff that I struggle with is cognitive, and although I can speak, although I can pretend that or, you know, I can appear articulate, I can appear to be on top of everything, when in fact, as soon as I finish a conversation, or as soon as I hang up a telephone at the end of it, I can't remember anything that was said. I can't remember. I can barely remember what day it is most times.
And that's
yeah,
a really
it can be really.
Yeah. That's actually a really important part, is getting to know that actual small fact that I can have a conversation with you, but I have to then immediately make sure I text you and let you know that is happening. is actually one of the most important parts about getting to know a person.
Yeah.
Andy, can I ask you? It's you've just had to get to know 5 people very quickly. How did you feel that? What any tips that you've got of actually trying to get to know people in that situation?
I think it is also important to note that, as Emma mentioned, that there's no space for turning down candidates on this. I think the first trait of a support worker for an entrepreneurship program is to have an open door policy. It's an open arm, like accepting any ideas coming from the candidates, accepting as well their business proposal, whatever ideas they have. And secondly, as we've established that from the very beginning, there's a low expectation of the candidates. There's this 9 out of 10. There's a low expectation of the business that they're going through or they're going to embarking to. Now, it is also important that the support worker would have that skill to lift that interest from the start of the idea of the business to an interesting business moving forwards. But then we're trying to profile knowing the candidate from the very beginning. So it is important to have an open arm, an open policy, so that you know the candidate more. You'll have an honest.
Can I just double check that you're actually saying that it's important, even though that the candidates may have sometimes a low expectations of success, that you as a support worker need a high expectation for them? That's what you're saying?
Yes, I think you just said it right, that as they would always have this low expectation. As a support worker, you always have to set that high expectation for them. So I think that is the best value or tip they would, if you would call it, for a support worker to profile or to understand more the candidate.
I think also, I think it's really important. One of the most important aspects is trying to agree a person's needs. Without that, we'll never make any progress. Emma, can you say something about why that is so important?
It has to be the person's needs, because it's the person that is in the centre of the whole process. You know, whilst you're doing that vocational profiling, it has to be, you know, their ideas and driven by them, not only to be a good facilitator, but they also have to drive it, because, you know, they're going to have the motivation to be able to get on and do these things, you know, themselves. So you want to try and find out as much as you can do about them. And, you know, through this process of vocational profiling and finding out, you know, what everybody wants to do and discover about them. Also, the place of where you both meet, I think, is also really important. And I heard about a fantastic piece of vocational profiling recently. There was a chap who was really interested in cycling, and his employment officer did cycling with him, and of course, you know, it's in a very natural environment for him, and he completely opened up. You know, going into a bit of a white sterile box or a very public place will stilt those conversations, and you know, somebody wouldn't necessarily open up. So yeah, just try all different kinds of ways. You know, even if you're wanting to say, look, I know I want my own business, but I'm not quite sure what I want to do. You know, go to those employers, you know, get some work experience for somebody, you know, test them, you know, are they able, you know, to make the things or the widgets that they want to produce. You know, keep looking at their skills. And as I say, it is ongoing, but you know, the whole thing is about being person-centered. and just keeping that whole social model of disability.
One of the most important aspects is to try and agree the person's needs. And I really think is that we always think that we have to be instructive, and yet really for entrepreneurship, I think it's about facilitation. And sometimes it's not telling the person what they should do, but actually giving the information that you know and your knowledge, but actually helping them down the road for them making a choice. Would you agree with that, Emma?
Yeah, absolutely. You almost kind of plant little seeds, because, you know, at the end of the day, that person, although they might need support, they still got to have certain attributes, you know, such as being motivated, because at the end of the day, it will be their business and not the facilitator's business. So, you know, by sort of having, you know, that confidence or the motivation to be able to go and do something. But because it's person-centered, you know, it's through all of that vocational profiling that the facilitator will be able to find out, you know, what that individual wants and kind of coax it out of them in different ways. It could be a role play, it could be doing a game, it could be going up and down the high street looking for something, you know, specific. It could be that, you know, you just sort of sitting down in a cafe and having a drink. It's wherever that person feels most comfortable. So, as I say, you know, if you plant those seeds, or you get a number of sort of options, but get somebody else to be able to work through those options, so that they come out with what it is that they want to do. In its most basic format, you can actually use something called talking mats, and you can have a mat with a big happy face and or a big green tick, and another carpet mat which has got you know, a sad face and or a big cross. And, you know, like, you could always like just put out photographs of something, and then they put it into the piles that you know that they actually want to do. So we all learn in different ways. You know, some are visual learners, some are kinesthetic learners. So we need to understand what their learning style is to be able to best support them to come to the decisions that they want to have.
Andy, can I ask you about this sort of the need to sort of facilitate to actually help the person grow and understand their businesses? Is there anything that's happened with your candidates that you'd like to share?
Yeah, well, agreeing with the needs of the candidate is as important as understanding their needs from the very beginning. And for understanding or agreeing with the candidate's needs, the facilitator is able to identify, help the candidate connect with the business environment, the help system, that could assist the business. So it is important as well to note that it is not the facilitator's idea to put that in perspective for the business, but it is actually the candidate's ideas, and the business is the candidate's ideas, and the facilitator needs to understand the needs of that candidate for the facilitator to help
make the business success,
move the business forward, and connect with the business environment as to assist the business.
I mean, I always remember one particular person who was designing the autistic toy, and sometimes her energy levels would go, and it was a bit about being able to give those tips that would enable her to actually succeed when she needed to pitch, to be saying, well, listen, you know, it doesn't matter if you're totally relaxed and dead the day before and you don't do anything, providing we actually get the preparation right and that we actually are up for something, for an hour, and then we're up for that hour. And after that hour, you can be as absolutely useless as you want to be, because it's that hour that's going to be really important. And that's actually was understanding that person's need to actually, that she needed to be really good for that hour. And after that, she needed to recuperate. And that was incredibly important. I think going on from that, that also means that we have to identify the elements and the community elements and all the support elements, because we can't do this on our own. And I think it's really important that we actually get to actually understand that we need actually help in doing that. Have you got any tips, Emma, in actually how you can actually make that work?
Again, it goes back to the core values about partnership work, and how we can work with others to be able to, you know, support what somebody actually needs and when they actually need it. So, as the example for the autism doll, we found somebody who would be able to give some learning and development to her, as well as having the practical element to it with a 3D printer. I just kind of also wanted to touch upon, you know, what you said is that, you know, there was times when she was, you know, tired, and and this again is exactly why supported self-employment would work, because it can work around somebody's disability in terms of, you know, when and how they actually deliver their business. So, you know, this is not about thinking as a last chance if what to do because I haven't been able to find a job. You know, you can find a really good niche market, and this can be your first choice.
Yeah, I think one of the important aspects, Andy, of this part of you identifying the network elements is to have the humility yourself, is not actually realizing that you don't know everything. And if you're going to help the business grow, I mean, we heard Miriam earlier. Miriam runs property agencies. I knew nothing about the property world. So it's about actually admitting that and actually trying to find people who can actually help and mentor that person and move them forward. Andy, I'll ask to you is, you know, one of the most important aspects of identifying network elements. I mean, I think as facilitators, we need a real clear view of all the innovation and all the research and all the market trends in our community. And the best way to do that is all the normal things, reading papers, keeping yourself sort of up to date with everything, and connection and connecting people. And I think good entrepreneur facilitators are good at actually connecting one person to another. Emma just mentioned about the fact that we would use someone who'd done a research elements in Kingston University, and then we'd met them at a disability confident element. I was going to say to you about some of your practical experiences. I know with Megan, you helped Megan, who is a young lady who is helping doing dog walking. Could you explain how you helped Megan as regards that, and how you did that?
Well, yeah, introducing Megan to an established business, a dog walking business, a bigger business that knows the ins and outs of this business, is one way, or an effective way of connecting the candidate to the actual business sector itself, the business field itself. So I have introduced Megan to Heidi, who owns the established dog walking business, and from there Heidi becomes the mentor of Megan, who was given all the fundamental requirements of the business that is needed for Megan to move forward with the ready business that she's got, which is the dog walking. So that is pretty much an example of how we could tap the network and ask the network to help the candidate that we support.
I think that moves on as well, is that, we often have to look at how we can help people with more funding, how the business might need funding, and we need that knowledge again. So it might be around private funding, so it might be with banks, it might be with commercial loans that people might need to be setting up, and of course that's the risk taking that we actually have to not only work with the candidate, but maybe we share with the candidate. But also I think there's a need and knowledge of what public funding there might be around, and we've been quite fortunate in our courses that we've used a different form of funding that is more around sort of personal finance. So actually it's been given by social services to actually help a person actually do the course themselves, and we've been able to help the candidates through that. Emma, can you give, I mean, we've had with some of our candidates some really innovative ways that they've been able to have been given money.
Yeah, I think originally the personal allowances that you were talking about were very much about, like personal care. But at the end of the day, it's about increasing somebody's independence. So they have kind of opened up that sort of direct payment system, which allowed to pay for the course, and then moving on, it will allow to have, say, like a personal advisor to be able to support them. And that is something certainly that Laura Green with Serendipity has done. She has used that person in a different way. And we also had kind of like a wraparound service as well for the people, certainly in terms of helping them regarding their benefits, to make sure that that they will still financially be better off. We've helped them with housing, with food, taking people off of the street. So there's people don't just come with an issue or an idea. There is so much like complexity to somebody, and it's like multifaceted. So those direct payments, and like looking at different funding streams and understanding what you might have to do or produce if you were a charity, compared to, say, being a sole trader, compared to having a limited company, and having that ideas, because some will lend themselves more to having external funding or lottery funding because of their status.
I think that's really important. I mean, I remember from the first courses having to warn someone against maybe using a credit card as a way of actually getting some money in, and having this real serious conversation is actually, this might be a better way of actually getting the money you might need. And I think this is the real problem sometimes facilitators have, is where do you actually start your support, and where do you actually end and say, actually, I don't think that's a good idea. I've always found it's best to be really, really honest and actually show a person, if they are going to sort of private finance, if you feel that that private finance is not going to be suitable or is attached to many risks, to be actually making sure that you do that and you talk with that. There's often other ways you can do. I mean, that's the same person I was talking to like that. We actually managed to go through the council route of actually helping him get a rent rebate, which was almost equal to the amount of money he was hoping to actually do the other way. So sometimes it's actually knowing what other finances are around that is actually safer, or is there any other sort of competitions that people might come in that would actually be able to give a different way of actually getting the money. I think we have to be very, very careful as entrepreneur facilitators. And in fact, I wouldn't recommend that you can actually go into the sort of the private finance. It has to be something that once the person's established the business, they feel confident they're actually doing themselves, because you can't underwrite that.
I think also the finances that you can potentially get from, say, your local benefits or government, again, it's about being mindful of when you might actually want to look at that opportunity, because if you do it too early, it could actually have, say, a detriment to your benefits, and that you have to be a viable business within a certain time. So it wouldn't be about sort of wanting to go and look at, you know, those finances too quickly. It's kind of like knowing what to do, where and when.
It's about understanding your market immediately, understanding the environment and what's around. It's one of the most important jobs. I think actually one of the things that I find as well in this is when you really start does that support work is setting that framework that how you're going to work with the person. I'm always in favor of almost like a small contract, something like a 50-50 agreement. This is what I'm going to be doing for you, and this is what I expect from you. So, you know, I was very clear, I think, with people is that I wasn't going to be forcing them to come to meetings with me. They had to almost be sort of saying, would set a meeting, I would expect them to be coming, which I don't regret, because I think the ones who were really successful were the ones who were actually pushing and saying, I want to meet you. Can I meet you next week? Andy, have you found that you've had to do that with your candidates, and have they complied as much as mine did?
So far, everybody has complied with the times that we have set for them, the slots that we have given them for this program. And for me, the most important thing is their interest that is moving them forward and ensuring that they're going to get the slot. In fact, they're more interested to get that slot rather than losing it.
Yeah, I think we've been very fortunate, Emma, when we set about. Of course, this wasn't to do with about forcing someone. We can't force someone into self-employment. It needs to be someone who wants to do this. Have you found creative ways of actually sort of making sure things go on time and things work when you're setting your communication meetings?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to know who that person is, because they will be motivated by different things. They will learn in different ways. So if you're smart, you will work on that together. So you know the person and you know what is going to spark something from them. Whether that's, you think, right, well, I'll give them a call and then I will follow it up by a text, or I would send an email, or I would say, let's get together so that we can go over anything, make sure that our action plan is co-produced so that they own what it is that they are going to do, and they have a clear expectation of what is expected to do, and also from me. So, as I say, being creative, and as I said, you know, there was the person who was doing some vocational profiling, and you know, he really enjoyed doing the cycling. And then, of course, you know, going along and cycling was the best way to get something out of somebody. So everything to do with supported employment and supported self-employment is, you know, creative. And it's about being able to, you know, read and understand people and what their needs are.
I think that actually moves on to one of the things that has always been a bugbear of mine is we tend to, as professionals, try to complicate things. And I think we tend to do that because we want to make ourselves look special. But if I've got one mantra for everyone is keep things simple. If you can't understand it, how on earth is the person that you're going to be working with understanding it? And I think it's really important is that we understand that every person's journey is different, and that to do that, we've got to make their journey as simple as possible. If it's simple, then we've got a good chance of actually making that happen. Would you agree, Emma?
Oh, yes. Yes, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
I don't favour really complicated things myself, so why would anybody else? You know, even if you have to just draw a diagram, you do whatever it takes just to make it, you know, simple, clear, concise, not fluffy, and then it's quite specific. So that's your SMART goals that you would use.
And I think that moves into that sort of goal setting. I think it's really important is when you're facilitating, is actually setting goals. Now, for some people, those goals may be quite big, but actually, I'm in favour often of setting very small goals at first for people that are achievable, that you can show that the person how much actually they've actually improved and what they're doing is actually moving things forward. There's this idea that we've all got to set people up as superheroes. Well, that's not the case. Often it's the little small goals actually start us getting into those businesses. And I think of all the businesses that have succeeded, they've come from really good ideas. But those ideas have needed those little small goals to get over the line to do various things. So, Andy, you'll be working with 5 people at the minute, and could you let me know some of the goals that you've been setting some of your candidates?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
Well, again, I agree with, simple tasks and small tasks. What I do really with the candidates is every time we have the session, when we have that slot for an hour, I ensure that for our next meeting we have goals. We set goals that would make them feel interested really to go on for the next session, which are simple ones, obtainable ones. So I think one of the task of a support worker is to ensure that these tasks are obtainable for the not as complicated as it should be, and ensure that they are achievable.
And I think this is where it comes to being a facilitator, where you have some real interesting ones with goals. I remember with Miriam, who I'm hoping again to be talking to tomorrow, as regards some of the goals that I started setting, and then it changed. And she was almost sort of setting the goals for herself. And all of a sudden I realized actually this is going to work, because she was the one who was actually saying, these are the goals I'm setting. And sometimes I'd be thinking, I'm not sure you're going to be able to achieve all of those. And I was having to say, okay, what is your plan B? So if you don't achieve this, what is your plan B? And I think but I was very much more hopeful as soon as I heard her starting to say that she was actually going to be setting her own goals. I actually knew things were actually going to change, which I think it moves us on to that bit about it's always important to be assessing and evaluating. And certainly as businesses start to develop, it's really important that we do that. Sometimes we need to change things. And I was thinking about Miriam as, she started changing from being just a purely finding a property market to being going into rent to rent, which has been very successful for her as a model. It is important, isn't it, Emma, if you don't evaluate and assess how people are going, we're never going to get them to that next level, are we?
You would be missing out on a major step if you didn't reevaluate and go over your action plan, not only to look about where you have come from, but certainly at the moment, whilst we record this during the coronavirus, businesses are having to pivot. If you don't pivot, it's like natural selection. Your business will not survive. So not only did Miriam just, sort of change the business initially, she's saying that she's also having to adapt during this time. So you need to go back to basics, look at, what you do, and, make some tweaks. It's easier to make 101% small changes than 100% change. Otherwise that picture would just get too overwhelming for you. So you need to go back, look at it. Is it working? Yes, no problem. Is it not? Okay, so what do I need to change, and what do my customers want?
One of the things I find as well is that often you need to get others to help as well. So if you can, it's good if you can engage that same vision to families and friends. It's not always easy, and it's surprising, and whether this is a UK thing, we often find it harder to actually get families and friends to be engaged in this. But I do think we need to get others to share that entrepreneur vision for our candidates. So, Andy, have you got any thoughts on that?
Well, definitely it is important to have that support system, which is really the family, the community, or the business sector that the candidate is intending to be. In fact, I could share with you one of the candidates who just came back from who, before participating in the program, has got a problem with speech, and because having gone through recovered from a stroke. But then, as we move forward with business, it is inevitable that she needs support from the business environment. And the best thing about it is that the family started coming in and helping the candidate, and that really boosts the success of the business, because everybody in the family has helped, and making all the connections to make the business happen. So yes, it is important.
One of the things also I find is this, people expect us to supervise. It's often we have words like key workers and employment support workers, and there is a difference between supervising and support. And I see this very much as support and not supervise. We're not supervising someone, we're trying to help a person grow. And I think if we don't, we start putting barriers in the way for that person, because we've got to eventually help that person stand on their own 2 feet and their business standing on their own 2 feet. Are there any tips that you might have, Emma, of making sure we don't fall into that sort of trap of supervising someone and trying to be the manager, when in actual fact is we shouldn't be the manager in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many times when I've seen parents de-skill their child because, it's quicker and it's easier for them to do it themselves, rather than to take the time to actually help somebody do something. You can use support mechanisms, such as task system instruction, to be able to teach somebody, quite complex tasks. So, they will be able to do it independently. If I keep on doing it, or even taking over, then that person isn't going to learn. It's going back to, I don't know, there's like a proverb, isn't there? If you give somebody a fish, they can have one dinner. But if you teach them to fish themselves, then they can have dinner whenever it is, that they want. Parents can sometimes de-skill somebody, or actually not even support somebody. So even when going back to what Andy was saying, is you need to choose who you want to actually really support you. Because if you've been told no most of your life that you will not be able to achieve, you will not get it, you don't know, you're not good enough, you really need somebody who's going to instill confidence in you. So yeah, I think that's it.
I always think one of the most important things, the most important lessons I always learned was, is you can actually be devil's advocate with your candidates. So you can be saying, are you sure you think this would actually be the right way? Or do you think this might actually be a better way? And I've actually found that my candidates' responses have been really good. And sometimes we have what we call brainstorming sessions, where they come in with an idea and I'll come with another idea. And they go away and they think about it and they come back, and sometimes they say, well, actually, I think what you were saying was absolutely stupid, Mr. Elston. You were totally wrong altogether. And sometimes they'll come back and say, actually, I think I can adapt what you're saying, then we can do it that way. And I think that's the difference between the relationship is so important. It is not you saying, well, I think your idea doesn't work. My idea is better than you. If I ever heard someone say that, I think, then that they're actually not going to actually help that person succeed in their business. Andy, have you ever had times when you've had to help a person? Maybe I know with Mel, you've worked really hard with her in actually looking at some of her business opportunities and making them see how they actually change?
Yeah, it is more of really that sharing of one's opinion of as a support worker's opinion to them, not giving it to them. There's a bit, for me, there's a difference between giving instructions or just sharing ideas. So as you share the ideas, they tend to look at it better than giving instructions. So for me, when I start sharing, what do they think of my idea? You know, by sharing it to them, it is more of a 50-50 relationship with the candidate. It's not something that one is managing the other, but it's more of a sharing of opinion, of ideas moving forward with the business. And
I think that also moves me neatly onto the bit of the, you know, when you start having to pass someone on to the next level, and Miriam is in that next level. I've had a couple of conversations during COVID-19, but I would say I describe it now as business owner to business owner. I would describe my conversations as not as a candidate who was on entrepreneur course, but someone who's actually successfully running their own business with the same sort of problems that I got running my own business. And I actually feel, you know, grateful that we've actually managed to get to a situation where I can pass on to the next level. But actually, I did find it very hard of actually letting go. And I think partly is because you don't want anything to go wrong, but actually there is a time when, you know, I think that you have to sort of help a person sort of move and know that they're moving in their own directions and they've taken control of the wheel totally. But I think a way of doing that is actually being able to have situations of saying, listen, if you ever want to have a conversation, then please do so. And I think that's what I found with Miriam is sometimes she'll phone me up and sometimes I'll be phoning her up. And it's a good conversation about, I would say, business owner to business owner. How have you found that, Emma, with some of the candidates that we've worked with?
You don't want to have build up an over-reliance on a relationship, because as much as you might like them and enjoy their company, your job is done when they fly free. As I say, you know, always come back to you. I mean, I've had somebody come back to me asking, you know, send me a text this morning, you know, what does such and such mean? You know, I will always do that. But you don't want that over reliance. And even if you look at it from a systematic instruction point of view, when you have two different tests going on, you know, one is doing, oh, like, you're doing a fantastic job, well done, you're amazing, that's great. Don't actually do as well as, you know, when you're actually job coaching and you're silent and you're not saying anything. You know, they're not going to be looking around for affirmation from you. You need to be, you know, very quiet and, you know, in the background. So it's slightly different because we're talking about, you know, business, and you might want to swap ideas, but you also need to make yourself aware that, you know, you don't want them to become over-reliant on you. And by doing this training, and everybody will be learning the same things, there's no reason why, you know, for example, if you're off sick today, that somebody else couldn't take over your place, because you will be supporting them in exactly the same kind of way that they need. Yeah, just don't build up that over-reliance.
I think that, for me, it's probably the most challenging aspect of when you supported employment. There's some real easy tests. You know, is a person doing the job properly? If they're not, well, you still need to be training them. Here it's slightly different because you're asking people to make their own decisions. They're moving the company forward, and I do think it's a challenging one. I found that candidates have also dealt with it in different ways. Some have just wanted to say, right, that's it. I don't need your support anymore. I'm quite happy. I really want to be on my own. Others have taken much more of a sanguine type of view and said, actually, I really value some of your conversations because it makes me think and it's been helpful. And it's probably too early for you, Andy, because you haven't got to, you've only just started with your candidates. But I suspect from me and Emma's point of view is an area that, you know, you will find challenging. I defy any person who's doing this that they won't find this sort of passing on to the next level. But actually, ultimately, we all know that that's the right thing to be doing. Is how you pass on to the next level is important, and to be able to help that person to realise this, if they need help at any stage, you are there for conversation and help in any way that you possibly can. I think is really important. I think finally for many people and is that important aspect of letting people know about signposting. There are many times when we hear the word, you know, jack of all trades, master of none. And actually it's really important when someone comes to you with a specific issue, if you don't know the answer, it's really important to signpost that person to the right answer. You know, otherwise we will get ourselves into problems. Can I have your thoughts on that, Emma?
Yeah, don't overpromise and underdeliver. And, you know, if you don't know something, say, you know what, I'm not too sure. However, I do know somebody who will be able to do that. And I do that all of the time. You know, I connect people on a daily basis because they will be able to help, you know, each other out. But it's also about knowing, you know, your labour market, so that you can see that it's going to be, you know, a viable business, and doing your research and getting those contacts so that, you know, when something does come up, you can go to them and say, you know, how do you do such and such? Rather than giving somebody some wrong information and then it blows up in both your face and their face. The idea is that you need to do the best job for that individual. If that means getting somebody who may well be better equipped to help them, that is also your job.
In a way, in a nutshell, I think what you're saying is it's actually really important to have that humility yourself, to actually know that you don't always know everything, but if you don't know everything, it's your job to actually try and find the best person. Would you agree with that, Andy?
Oh, totally. In fact, I think the fundamental of a state of a support worker is to ensure that they understand that they're not there as an expert. They're there to assist and to connect, and that's facilitation. A person, a support worker, is not like a master of anything that they would ask you, but then you're there to assist them, to connect them to the network, to whatever they need to make that business progress, to become a business ready.
And I think one of the things to be finishing on is what we're all wanting is for these businesses to succeed. Any good employment facilitator, really they get their kicks when that business is actually starting to succeed, and when that person comes out and they show that they're a person. I have a wonderful image of one particular person that we had who actually came to us as a very quiet person and wanted to be a flower seller. And I remember her going to Miriam's launch that hopefully I'll be able to talk to Miriam later about. And she looked $1 million. She was someone who was so scared about going anywhere. And actually she did all the flowers, and it was wonderful to see this person actually grow. And I think they're the biggest things that actually is really important, is why you do this correctly. If you do it correctly, then people actually, you watch people not only grow with their businesses, but you see them grow as individuals. And that's the bit that always gives me the kicks. So
I agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
which I think is a really good place to end. So can I thank you both for this, and for Miriam who came to join us at the beginning, and hopefully we'll have a chat at the end of this.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The internet
Thank you.
willing. Okay, thank you very much.